ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददति स्वापदान्तिकाम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम्। साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्ता काञ्चन गौरङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दना जय ब्रजजनरञ्जना जय यशोदानन्दना जय ब्रजजनरञ्जना जय यमुनातीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय यमुनातीरवनचारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुञ्ज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुञ्ज बिहारी हरे Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda ki jai, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Pravanandi, Hari Bol. Nama Om Vishnu Padam Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Hridayananda Das Goswami Niti Namane Namaste Guru Hasa Paramananda Medasi Prabhupada Pramodaya Dushta Siddhanta Nashiri. Before reading Bhagavad Gita, we will chant the mantra Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Are you familiar with that mantra? If you're not, try to repeat. This mantra means I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, who has appeared as a son of Vasudeva. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukam karati vachalam pangom langate girim yat kripatamaham bande Shri Gurun Vinatarinam Paramananda Madhvam Shri Chaitanya Shri. So tonight we are going to be reading from chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 15, as maybe some of you know, some of you maybe not, but I will mention maybe some of the things that you might be already familiar to some, but might be someone hearing for the first time. So, as we know, Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, and this is chapter 15, which is part of the 6 final chapters. And Bhagavad Gita is divided in 3 parts, 6 chapters each. So we know a little bit of maths as well. 3 times 6 equals 18. Yep. So we are also learning some useful material knowledge here. Multiplications and division. So the final 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are also known as section of yoga, of jnana yoga. And previous to this is, or the middle 6 chapters describe bhakti yoga or devotional yoga. And the first chapters describe karma yoga, first 6 chapters. But throughout all of the chapters, Krishna explains the ultimate conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita. And as we know, if we read Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada, in almost every verse, Srila Prabhupada gives us an ultimate conclusion, or he gives us a perspective from which to understand each verse in terms of its final conclusion. And also these 3 sections of the Bhagavad Gita, karma, bhakti, jnana, are just Krishna's explanations from all different points of view of the ultimate conclusion of this philosophical treatise. As we can define Bhagavad Gita as a philosophical treatise, but it is also a theological treatise and part of the epic Mahabharata. So Bhagavad Gita is known as Ishopanishad, as Gita-Upanishad, and the Upanishads we understand belong to the Veda part of the Sanskrit literature, or the Shruti part of the Sanskrit literature, which are the Upanishads. And thank you. Which are the Upanishads that describe philosophical part, or the part of the Veda that describe the transcendence, or the theology, or metaphysics of the Vedic literature. And then Smriti literature is, there are various histories and various anecdotes that further explain the essence of the Veda, but in a more practical way that is more easily understood by general mass of people. And we know that the Veda used to be only specialized, to those who are studying the Veda. They were trained from the birth, the Brahmana class. However, the Smriti literature was available to everyone, to all the population. So through the Smriti literature, we can also understand the essence of the Vedic message, or the message of spiritual wisdom. So here, we're going to read the verse for this evening, and then we will discuss. Thank you. I will read the Sanskrit, and we can do word for word and a translation, if you don't have a Bhagavad Gita with you, but we can chant 15, 18. Okay. So, Yasmad Ksharam Atitoham Aksharad Api Chottamam Atosmi Loke Vedecham Prathita Purushottamam Yasmad Ksharam Atitoham Aksharada Pichottamam Atosmi loke vedecha pratitha purushottama. Would you like to chant? Yasmad ksharam matitoham aksharada pichottama atosmi loke vedecha pratitha purushottama. So we'll do word for word. Yasmat, because. Ksharam, to the fallible. Atita, transcendental. Aham, I am. Aksharat, beyond the infallible. Api, also. Cha, and. Uttama, the best. Ata, therefore. Asmi, I am. Loke, in the world. Vede, in the Vedic literature. Cha, and. Pratita, celebrated. Purusha Uttama, as the Supreme Personality. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. No one, maybe you can repeat the translation as well. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies in the Paurusha Agama, the Smriti scripture, as confirmed in a Nirukti dictionary, Lokyate Vedharto Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad 8.12.3. Tava desha samprasado smach charirat samutaya param jyoti rupam sampadya svena abhinishpadyate sa uttama purusha. The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahmajyoti, then in his form he remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. The Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, here we are. This chapter is called Purushottama Yoga, or the Yoga of the Supreme Person. And now we see the final concluding verse of this chapter. As I mentioned, in all of the chapters, Krishna brings the conclusion from the beginning, from the chapter 2, even when Krishna gives hints to what is the ultimate conclusion, who is the ultimate source of the spiritual souls, who is the ultimate source of the world, who is the ultimate source of living entities. Everything here is, Krishna explains more directly, and he proclaims himself to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead standing in front of Arjuna on the battlefield. So, to connect it to this verse, to the previous chapter, Krishna mentioned Ksharam and Aksharam. He describes the two kinds of living entities in 15:16. Dva vimau purushav loke ksharat cha kshara eva cha. There are two kinds of living entities, fallible and infallible. Kshara sarvam nibhutani kutasto kshara uchyate. That in a material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is infallible. So, Krishna explains that out of all of these living entities that he's mentioned previously, fallible and infallible, he, the Supreme Personality, is transcendental to both of them. So this word Uttama, Atita and Uttama. So Atita means transcendental, and Uttama means the supreme among all. So, as I mentioned, Bhagavad Gita is also known as Gita Upanishad, which means that the topics discussed in the Bhagavad Gita are the topics of the Upanishads, of the Upanishads who are the philosophical parts of the Veda. So here, Krishna proclaims that Asmi loke vede cha. So I am described as Purushottama, the Supreme Person. Loke in the world and Vede in the Veda. So, in the Veda, we have various descriptions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The oldest known, even to the circles which are non-traditional circles, and even in academic circles, it is accepted that Rig Veda, and specifically Purusha Sukta, or the Sukta of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama, is the oldest known writing of the Vedic writing. So, from the oldest known tradition, we understand that Krishna is glorified as the Supreme Person is described. And here Krishna proclaims that it is he who is glorified in these Vedas. So the Purusha, glorified in the Purusha Sukta, is directly present in Kurukshetra before Arjuna. So Vede in the Veda, and Loke. So celebrated both in the Veda and in the world. So Loke also refers to Smriti literature as opposed to Shruti literature. So that's why Srila Prabhupada here quotes Smriti scripture in the second paragraph. The word Loke signifies in the Purushagama the Smriti scriptures. This where Purushagama describes the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, as Srila Prabhupada has mentioned, that Smriti literature explains further the meaning of the Shruti literature for the general people. As we know, in the Vedic tradition, study of the Veda was only delegated to the Brahmana class or the Dvija Bandhus. So, in order to study the Veda, in order to hear the Shruti mantras, and you have to be, follow very strict lifestyle of purity, and before one can actually approach and read the Veda and ultimately understand the philosophical meaning, which are all hidden meanings in the Upanishads. That's why Upanishads are also known. The name of Upanishad means one who sits near. So, which means that these are the knowledge described in Upanishads is a confidential knowledge which is transferred from the disciplic succession, from guru to disciple, who is disciplined. And we know that the traditional way of discipleship is many years of service and practicing humility, practicing different qualities, so that one is actually qualified to and able to hear and absorb the confidential knowledge, spiritual knowledge, which is imparted to the sincere disciples, to show the sincerity, to actually be able to gain insight in the most confidential parts of Vedic knowledge. There is a process. So we can understand by a little bit, by getting the glimpse of the traditional ways, we can also appreciate how blessed we are by actually from being able to access the most confidential knowledge by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So who has made this knowledge easily accessible and digestible. So Srila Prabhupada is, in his purport, explaining the essence, the conclusions, the most confidential knowledge that is in the Veda and also in the Shruti scriptures, which explain the Veda further. So Srila Prabhupada has given us the cream on a golden platter, so to speak. And so I think even if you just kind of think in that way, we can just appreciate how fortunate we are and how great Srila Prabhupada is, that he's taken so much trouble to actually bring this knowledge to a fallen civilization of this Kali Yuga, and transformed many lives, and keeps transforming many lives. Whoever comes in contact with Srila Prabhupada's movement or Srila Prabhupada's books is transformed. And then we can see the power of actually coming in contact with this pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and also coming in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself as a holy name, and in his forms, in his beautiful transcendental forms in the temples. Shri Shri Radha Gokulananda, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshman, Shri Shri Gornitai. So the Veda describe, other parts of the Veda describes Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kaman. that one out of many, eko bahunam, one out of many souls is Chaitana, conscious, out of many conscious souls. Nitya, eternal, out of many nityas, nityanam. So we have basically one personality, supreme personality, that position is taken. So only one is there, and it's already taken. So we are the other ones. We are these many ones. We belong to these many souls or individuals or conscious living entities, eternal living entities. So one thing we know, we are eternal and we are conscious eternally. And Srila Prabhupada here describes, this is important to understand, that it is clear that living entities and Supreme Personality of God, there are individuals. So this individuality is eternal. We never actually lose this individuality. And from the beginning, Krishna explains this, that natveva ham chatu nasam, natvam neme chandadipa, nachaiva nabhavishyama, sarve vayam ataparam. All of these kings and you and me have always existed, and there will never be a time in the future when we will not exist. So the existence of the soul of individuality is eternal. And however, the difference is in quantity. So we understand that qualitatively we are of the same spiritual nature of consciousness, of individuality, just like the Supreme Personality is one who is eternally conscious. Please come in. Yes, the Arti will start in half an hour, in 25 minutes, but right now we have a Bhagavad Gita class, so if you would like to join and listen, you're welcome. Yes, in 25 minutes. So if you are, we're having a discussion of Bhagavad Gita, and you can either join or you can wait and have a look. Yes, if you please. Yes, please, you can look around. You can see also the gardens and the lake. Hare Krishna. So, we're all living entities, we're all eternal, we know that. So whether we are in a conditioned state or in a liberated state, the living entities who are in a liberated state, they're all eternal. So now we are these kshara, living entities, or fallen or fallible living entities. But nevertheless, the individuality and the eternity and the consciousness is always with us. We understand, this is established. So this is very good news from one point of view, to really rejoice, to actually understand that even though we do experience mortality around us of the body, we are actually eternal souls who reside in these bodies. We are dehins, or we are these living entities, but we have taken these bodies. We have now embodied in these dehas, and the dehin means the one who has the body. So we're one of those living entities who have bodies in this world, which means that once we are born, we will one day die. We will one day leave these bodies. The bodies are temporary. So this is also good news, that we are the changes of the bodies that we are experiencing or seeing other experience, people who might be dear or in different situations. We understand that this is only a temporary situation, and that ultimately the soul can never be destroyed, or it will never disappear, it will never perish. So that's why it's important, really, in this lifetime, when we are able to actually understand this truth, to really try to absorb this knowledge and see things as they are, to see the spiritual nature underneath. So in the beginning of this chapter, Krishna explained this, how the living entities take in different bodies according to the consciousness and choices that one has made in this lifetime, and we take another body. And so in a 15:10, Krishna says, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So this is now the opportunity for us to actually train our mind in this knowledge and actually see this spiritual nature that's everywhere, that's in underlying every living entity, every person that we see, and also other living entities. And it says that, next verse, 15:11, the endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all of this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. So Krishna is explaining here about seeing the spiritual nature. And we can get there by training the mind. And just like, and also in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions that some see the soul as amazing, some hear about him as amazing. And some, even after hearing for so long, they just cannot understand. And here again, it's a similar thing. Even they may try, they just can't get it. So I think we just have to understand, sometimes, we try to share the knowledge, we try to give this wisdom to everyone, whoever is willing to hear. But we have to also understand that there are some people who they will never understand, they will not get it, they will not understand. So, we always have to be patient and maybe give them some prasadam, or give them sort of opportunity to make advancement, spiritual advances, to become purified in some way, so that the grounds can be prepared for later, for at some point when the bhakti seed will be able to sprout at one point. But I think I like this sort of analogy. When I was trying to understand some of these points, and to me it makes sense, the analogy of Bhaktilata and the plant of bhakti. When we receive mercy of Guru, we receive a seed of bhakti plant. And then this bhakti plant, when we actually make a conscious decision to start with the bhakti path, which means that we understand, I am eternal servant of the Lord, I'm a soul eternally related to the Supreme, and I'm his eternal servant. And then when we make this conscious decision and we decide to start the process of bhakti, to revive our dormant love for Krishna, then this bhakti lata is watered by the process of chanting and hearing and the process of bhakti practice. But the ground of this seed, how do we know, like, someone becomes a devotee, someone doesn't become devotee immediately? So maybe some souls need more time. And so some of the souls, they just can't understand anything, and some, wow, that makes sense immediately. They accept it. So this process of spiritual advancement comes for many, many years. And Krishna explains also, Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate, that after many, many births, one who actually comes to this knowledge, he surrenders to me. And so this bhakti plant and the ground for bhakti plant, if someone cannot understand, we can help them, give them some prasadam, let them hear the holy name. So this is Agyata Sukriti, or the unknown pious activity. And these non-pious activities are like preparing the ground. So at one point, when the person actually kind of accumulates these agyata sukritis and comes in contact with Guru, with the devotee who points him the direction, and he comes to the point of understanding, yes, I'm the eternal servant of the Lord. Then that kind of all the preparation of the ground that we can start with his bhakti path. I don't know if this makes sense to you, but yes, you want to. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. 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 Krishna is always, he is actually closest to us. He's already very close to us. But those steps that we are making is actually our turning towards Krishna, like turning our face towards Krishna as opposed to trying to seek happiness somewhere out. Yes, and this actually chapter really describes a lot about this because we have our independence, and from 15:8, where Krishna explains that the living entity we make our choices. So yeah, that living entity carries different conceptions and from one body to another as the air carries aromas. And Srila Prabhupada describes in this purport that we create our own consciousness by our own choices. And so the one thing of spiritual life is that it is completely voluntary and it's completely based on a free will. And so then the Paramatma, this is also described because this verse, I was going to come to this now as well. This verse describes that the Supreme Person is celebrated in the Veda and in the world. So in the Smriti and Shruti literature as the Supreme Person. And Srila Prabhupada also describes, he quotes the Chandogya Upanishad where it is describes that Supreme Person is the source of Paramatma and also Brahman. And so these three aspects of the Supreme Lord, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, and this verse describes, Krishna concludes his Bhagavan feature, and the last two verses were talking about Brahman and Paramatma. So the verse before, 15:17, besides these two, there is a great living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. So here Krishna describes his Paramatma feature who has entered the worlds and maintaining. And also, like you mentioned, is sitting in our heart as two birds sitting on a tree. One is trying to enjoy the fruits, and the other one is witnessing and waiting for his friend to. And so, just like how the soul in this chapter, Krishna explains how the soul passes from one body to another, carries the aroma, the analogy of the consciousness, just like the air carries a certain aroma. This is how we carry the spiritual soul. The spirit soul is being carried by the subtle body that he is created by his choices to a next body. And and this is all enabled by the Supreme Soul, by the Paramatma. And in chapter 13 and 14, we have this, very detailed description of Purusha who is witnessing and Paramatma who is witnessing and enabling us to experience. And we understand also in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shavyate, that the supreme truth is understood in three features: Paramatma, Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. And of course, this chapter also is led to from the end of chapter 14, where Krishna describes himself as the source of the Brahman manifestation. That is 14:27. Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukhasya ikantikasya cha. So the Brahman level is understanding of the eternity, of our eternity. So further is the Paramatma level, understanding of the consciousness or the knowledge of the living, so eternal. So this Nityanam, Chaitanam, and finally understanding of the supreme so Purushottama, or the supreme ultimate aspect of the Lord, or the absolute truth, and his Bhagavan feature, in as a loving Lord who wants us to go back to the spiritual world, and he wants us to love him. This is the ultimate understanding. The ultimate realization of the absolute truth is this loving relationship that we have dormant within, the dormant prema. And this is, of course, elaborated by Lord Chaitanya, who has appeared to establish the Kali Yuga, but also to give us the most confidential knowledge of Krishna Prema. And he has appeared as a devotee in the mode of the highest devotee, Srimati Radharani, who has exhibited this complete selfless love, which is the highest understanding of love of God, Prema Bhakti, in this complete selfless service. And so in order to get there, first we need to understand the basics, that the relationships, the Supreme Lord is superior and we are inferior. So this inferiority, Srila Prabhupada, it's very interesting how Srila Prabhupada says, there is always question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. It's like amazing how Srila Prabhupada puts these sentences together. It's very unique way how Srila Prabhupada expresses himself. And I feel like, every time you read, you can just kind of try to get this mood, how what Srila Prabhupada really, it's from his ecstasy, from his Krishna consciousness, and the way how he's in this moment describing this purport and describing this verse. I think it's really nice to try to read Prabhupada's sentences and try to really meditate what he really means by this. So there's always question of superiority and inferiority, and to understand that we are always inferior we are the inferior living entities. If you just think about that, just like 2 words, Prabhupada's purport, it's like a huge thing. If you can actually remember our whole life that we are always inferior, and not to try to lord it over material nature, that will kind of save us from so much trouble, So Um, so I will end here, and I would just want to ask for a couple of questions and comments, so we give some time to maybe discuss some more points. Do you like? Exactly. That's why we're here. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Just see, even that one sentence of Srila Prabhupada that says, if you can just understand that simple point, it's like, this is huge. Comparing to just like a huge realization, comparing to, because most of what we see, the ksharam living entities, or the fallible living entities with this that are embodied, so we are here with a mentality of trying to lord it over the material nature, try to enjoy the senses, try to look for happiness outside, all of these. So it's like, just to understand this simple point that we are actually servants of the Lord, this is actually huge, just, because spiritualists, all over the world in different traditions, we're trying to understand just like a point of whether we are soul or we're the body, or, like just to get to the point to understand that the soul is different than the body. It's also huge. It's like thousands and thousands spiritualists are not quite clear yet even, is this the body, the soul? They think the body is soul. They're not like come to the point of like basic ABC of the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna explains, Natveva ham jatu nasam, you are eternal living entity, and the soul is always different than this body. The body is fallible, the body will, is born and dies, the soul stays. So this is the confidential knowledge, but it is just basic understanding. And this is like this kind of Brahman realization, to understand that we are Brahman. When in the Veda also, most of the Veda is about karma kanda, because it's actually meant to talk to the living entities who have come here to try to enjoy. So the Veda regulate these activities and give some direction about how, what to do to be happy and in this world, and not to incur too much bad karma, but also at the same time sort of be regulated and avoid falling down back into the animalistic species of life. But in the beginning of Bhagavad, when Krishna starts explaining to Arjuna, you're not this body, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yovananjara tatha dehantara prapti dhiras tatra namuhyati. The wise are not disturbed by these changes of the body. And then, in the end of the treatise of understanding the difference between the soul and the body, Krishna says, Traigunya Vishaya Veda Nishtraigunya Bhavarjuna. He says, the Veda is just dealing with these three gunas. Become transcendental to them. Just like Krishna here in this verse explained, I am the transcendental to all of these. And Krishna also says to Arjuna, be transcendental to this world. And the chapter also starts with describing the banyan tree and comparing it to this world, and the entanglement is actually, he says, also described that the Veda actually is like different hymns of the Vedas are different entanglements in these trees. And he says, no, cut it off. You are eternal, you are transcendental, You don't belong here, you're not going to be happy here. It's just birth and death. Thousands and thousands of years spent in the higher planets, and then you have to come back again. So what's the point? Just go back home. You don't belong here. So over and over again, Krishna explains from all different points of view, from all different approaches, from the karma approach, from the yoga approach, from jnana approach, the same point. And so for whatever tradition we come or are accustomed to, or we are maybe, by our nature, maybe we're attracted to some tradition or spirituality that is maybe more of a karma or more of a jnana or more of a yoga tradition, but ultimately the supreme truth is the supreme personality of Godhead. And through bhakti, ultimately all of the practices are meant to bring us to this conclusion that the soul is eternal and eternal related to the Supreme Lord in love, and this love is dormant in everyone's heart, and that's why we're seeking this. We're seeking everywhere else, and we cannot find it unless we turn inside and we see that Krishna is in our heart, waiting for us to turn to Him, and then we will be fulfilled. And thank you for coming, and we'll see you.